Hello and welcome to the Breaking Free podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Francis, and today I'm very grateful and very humble to be joined by Livia Lowder. Now, I'm just gonna be truthful here. I found Livia in a podcast Facebook group full of like 2 million people. She did a post, don't know how I saw it, and I was lucky enough to be interviewed on her podcast, which will come out later in the year. So Livia's a couple of years older than me. She's been on an interesting journey as well. I feel like we've been on similar journeys, just in a female form. We've been talking for the last little bit, and yeah, a lot of similarities, and it's very, very refreshing to have someone in my age group that's aware of things and is doing some cool things outside of the system as well. And Livia is the host of Emotions Untapped podcast, and she joins the show today. Livia, welcome. How are you?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm great. I'm excited to be here. We changed a few dates and it kind of dragged out a little while, but I interviewed you and now here we are. You're interviewing me. So full circle. I'm happy to be here. This is fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty awesome show. So I really do hope at the end of this year you have a dad joke for me. I was on a podcast last week and he was a listener of my show and he said to me, he goes, Nathan, bring back your dad jokes. I'm like, all right, well, I hope you have a dad joke for the end. I'll put you on the spot here.
Ooh, okay. Ooh, that made me a little nervous, actually. I'm not gonna lie.
I'll share one too. So, Livia, let's get into your story a bit. So it's very similar to mine. My listeners know mine, obviously. So, Livia, let's delve into your story over the last probably what 4, 5, 6 years.
The last 4 years have definitely been a transformative couple of years. Absolutely. I guess the journey started, I guess in a way it started in 2015.
Ah,
So I'm from Canada. I was in Canada and I was working at a radio station, which is what I went to school for. And I just kind of had this meltdown one day and I wasn't happy with what I was doing. I was like, is this all there is? Like I'm in a dungeon radio station doing the morning show, which is kind of like the top of where you want to be, although I was in a small town, so it wasn't a rated market or anything like that. But anyway, just reflecting and having like a little mini life crisis at the age of 21, 22. And I just decided to travel. It was time to kind of leave the home turf and go on an adventure. So I decided that I was going to go to Australia and go backpacking for a year.
love it.
And yeah, I was actually quite funny. I had a couple of friends like, "Oh, you'll never come back," and making jokes. And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I'll be back in a year." Well, they were right. Not that I never came back, but I did end up staying in Australia for 8.5 years. I just moved back to Canada a year ago, so in August 2023. And it's honestly it was an incredible experience. It was an absolute privilege to be able to stay there that long. I met up with a fella and we ended up together in a relationship. So
Fella.
I got my permanent residency and I stayed. And so that's how I was able to actually do that, which was really cool. But then yeah, so fast forward to 4 years ago, the relationship ended very traumatically. I didn't realize it at the time, but there was narcissistic abuse happening and had been
Ooh.
happening for years. I'm in a foreign country on my own. I didn't have like close friends or family or, that kind of support around me. So I kind of just woke up one day and didn't really recognize myself. I didn't really understand how my life was what it was, the things that I was experiencing, how I was being spoken to, treated, how I felt about myself, my self-esteem, my self-worth, my inner compass, everything was messed up. And it took a while, once I kind of realized that, it still took a while to get out of that relationship. We were together for 6 years. It was probably super rocky for the last year and a half, 2 years. We had a house together, cars, trailers, boats, the whole thing. I was like, this is my life, I'm in Australia. Cool. Um, and then so as we were breaking up, as this whole process was happening, so did COVID. So that really threw a spanner in the works because again, here I am in this foreign country. This foreign country is an island, essentially, right? Like the biggest island on the planet. And obviously, as everyone knows, when the pandemic hit, the world stopped. There was no planes, trains, automobiles, nothing. So I wanted nothing more than to just come home. And I
Mm.
just longed so deeply to just like be with my parents and my friends and just someone to hold me through all of that because it was very, very traumatic. I feel as though I died and was kind of reborn. I know it sounds a little bit
Ooh.
dramatic, but it really was like a phoenix rising situation because I completely lost who I was, as I mentioned, in that relationship. And when the relationship ended, also all the friends group that I had at the time also went with that relationship.
Oh.
So yeah, it was really, really heavy. Um, and I was a puddle for a while. I
Mm.
was working in a quite a dangerous job. I was working in arboriculture, like cutting trees, removing trees, so chippers, chainsaws, dangerous equipment. Mentally, I was very unstable. I had to leave that job because I was like, I'm gonna hurt somebody or myself or get or kill somebody or myself because I'm not here. I'm not mentally here. I'm completely somewhere else. I'm completely checked out. And again, this all happened during COVID, so I was essentially stuck and didn't really have a way to leave. This is pretty much what sparked the spiritual awakening, I guess you could
Ooh.
say. I went in, so I had an experience. So I didn't go to work. I was like, kept not going to work, and it was a week, 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I need a note now. So I went into the doctor, poured my heart out, was crying in the doctor's office. I'm like, I need a note for work. I haven't been at work for a week. And like, oh, is everything okay? Blah, cue the
Mm.
waterworks, right? And so the doctor, she was a female doctor, so she was very quite compassionate. And she actually said to me, well, she essentially diagnosed me as depressed and anxiety. And hearing that was really, what's the word? It just hit me like a truck
Mm.
hearing that because I was always like the party girl, the what's the word? Introvert, extrovert, the
Yeah.
extrovert, the life of the party, like always laughing, smiling. I never consider myself depressed or sad or, I was always in a good mood, always like life is great and this and that. And to hear that, I was like, wow, that is not who I am at all whatsoever. So I kind of knew right at that moment it was time to start doing something, to start taking action. I had like cried about it and been in a puddle for a couple of weeks at that point, and then when I got that kind of diagnosis, I was like, all right, something's got to give here. So one thing I knew for sure though, and all that was I knew that I hadn't always been that way, right? Like this was something that had happened, this diagnosis of depression and anxiety. And I was like, okay, well, that's how and who I am right now. That's not how I was before, and that's not who I'm going to be in the future. Like I knew that I wasn't going to stay in that place forever, but I didn't know how to get out of that place. But I knew that I would. I had some really key like girlfriends, couple of friends that were outside of that main friends group that did really support me through this time. My good friend Anna, actually, she gave me my first crystal necklace. And
Hey,
that
cool.
was, yeah. And then that was kind of, that really was a huge part of the start of the spiritual journey, I would say. She gave me this clear quartz, not this one, but she gave me a clear quartz necklace. And she said, it's for clarity. 2 weeks
Mm.
later was when I said to my partner at the time, this is done. This is
Whoa.
over. And it had been, like I said, a year and a half or so of chaos. I felt different when I wore that necklace. And I was like, oh my God, this is real. And I think that was what really sparked the whole journey. So here I was, essentially on my own. I had like one or two girlfriends, and I was like, right, it's time to rebuild. So I was living in Margaret River at the time in Western Australia, and it's really quite hippie, quite alternative. There's a lot of people that um, are trained in different healing modalities. There's ecstatic dance, there's breath work and sound bath healings, meditations, like all this kind of stuff. So I really dug into all that. I did start with talk therapy for a while. And one thing I got to say about talk therapy, I think it's a really great place to start for anyone who's, needs some help, needs some support. Um, and what it did for me was it really helped me become aware of what my issues were and where they kind of came from. However, it did not give me the tools to
Yeah.
grow and kind of evolve and heal those issues that I had inside me. So it was a fantastic jumping off point, but I needed more. And so I, threw spaghetti at the wall, as they say. And I was like, right, let's do all the things. So I did like some hypnotherapy. I had a
Ooh.
RTT session. I did some Reiki. I was all about the crystals. I started doing tarot card readings for myself. I would go to ecstatic dance. I would go to like doofs and parties and just kind of, and like go, but I would go sober and I would just like get into the music and the vibe. And I would, go and do things on my own as well. That was like a huge thing for me where I was quite codependent in relationships. I have been in the past, and especially with the one that I was in. I mean, we lived together, we had a house together. That was my person. So when that ended, I physically felt like I was missing a limb. I felt like my arm was missing. And it was really difficult to learn to be comfortable on my own. I was very uncomfortable with myself, with my own company. And one of the things that I did was I kind of just started doing things on my own. I would like go get breakfast and just sit and have my breakfast at a cafe by myself, or I would go to the beach by myself. Or I would start to do little things and kind of date myself, if you will, and that was huge. And then, yeah, like I said, all the other kind of modalities and all the other things that I was just trying really helped me to kind of rebuild myself again and build up my self-confidence. The going out and doing things on my own, huge for my self-confidence. That was probably the biggest thing that helped me get that back because I've always been a very confident person. Um, and finding the right groups of people, and really just, yeah, I guess, that was just kind of where it began to evolve from there. And once you start the journey, it doesn't end, right? Like it's now you're in it and you're like, okay, this is a lifetime of work. Let's do it. So I had always had dreams of having a podcast because I studied radio broadcasting back in college, back in the day. And when that relationship ended, I don't remember exactly when, maybe about a year after. So I started a podcast. And it wasn't the one I have now. It was a different one. It was called the Expat Chronicles. And it was
Oh.
it was me interviewing expats about their story, their journey. The point was connection.
Yeah.
It was like anybody who's an expat or has even traveled overseas, you get there and you realize, oh shit, I am on my own. Like I'm lonely. And you go through things and you experience things, and the people around you that maybe are from that place don't quite get it. So I had this kind of vision where, if I feel this way, if I feel as an expat that, not a lot of people get me and this and that, and I'm desiring that connection, I was like, well, if I have conversations with other expats, they get it. So I was like, how about I bring conversations with other expats to a platform and share that with the world? And then other expats can hear that and go, oh, yeah, me too. I get that. So started a podcast a little bit after the breakup, started to, yeah, really find myself again and start to grow. And then fast forward from that to now, so kind of 4 years after the breakup, I decided it was finally time to move back to Canada. So I moved back last year, and now I'm completely starting my life all over again. It's like I kind of just put myself back on that track, and it's comical and it's hard. And some days are, really tough. And it's like, why did I do this to myself? But also, I just feel like I've got some big fish to fry in this lifetime. And I'm quite dedicated to making myself uncomfortable intentionally on a regular basis because the version of me that I want to be is not the version of me right here, right now. And in order to get there, I need to keep busting through those grids and getting out of those comfort boxes. So, I mean, that's kind of me now. And then the podcast. So the podcast that I have now, I launched in July. So I've got 13 episodes out now. Season one's just wrapping up. Season two will be starting soon. This one is about emotional intelligence. As you said, it's called Emotions Untapped. I had a realization about 3 years post breakup that all of that work that I had been doing, all of the healing, all of the reconnecting to myself, all of the self awareness I was building, the self regulation that I was practicing. Because, I don't, not to go down too far the narcissistic rabbit hole there, but like being with a narcissist literally changes the chemistry of your brain. It affects your body on a chemical level. So the self-regulation was something that I had to learn, and it was very difficult to do so. And I felt on that journey very alone, although, like I said, I had a few friends and that supporting me, but I did feel alone in that whole, 3 to 4 years after the breakup. I was figuring it out, but like I said, I was throwing spaghetti at the wall. I feel like I didn't really have much guidance in the emotional, spiritual kind of avenue that I was walking down. And I had a realization, you know, 3, 4 years later of, oh, what I did was I improved my emotional intelligence. Like in a
Mm.
nutshell, all of the work that I did and all of the things I learned and the tools that I acquired all kind of fell under this umbrella of emotional intelligence. And that whole time, I just wanted someone to reach out their hand and go, I can show you the way. Let's go in this direction. And I never had that. So I've taken it upon myself to be that outreach hand for other people who are on a journey of, losing their identity, feeling completely lost, feeling, for lack of a better word, discombobulated, like completely thrown off their track. And whether it be from a breakup or a career loss or any type of life event that has brought up questions for them and has them wondering what direction they go in, I believe that emotional health and emotional intelligence is the way forward. And I've kind of, like I said, taken it upon myself to make it my mission to be that outreached hand for people, and to, again, using the podcast and other people's knowledge to share as much information as possible on this topic. Because it's not all coming from me. There's experts in so many different things, and I love to pick their brain and ask them the questions that I would have wanted to ask when I was on that journey, and then share those answers and those conversations with the world. So that's where we are today.
That is an awesome, powerful story. So much to unpack
Thank
and
you.
so many things to circle back on. I don't want to circle back on I just I sat here going, I need to bring up that one point. There's a few, but one that did come to mind was when you said you felt like you were in a bit of a rebirth, like you were reborn.
Mm,
Like I think a lot of people can resonate with that because that's pretty much what the last 4 years was. Would you agree? Yeah. It was like this
absolutely. It was
massive rebirthing period for everyone.
Yeah, it was a huge shakeup, and people either
Yeah.
embraced it or resisted it, I feel as
Correct.
well. I feel like it divided us in that way. Divided is such a kind of negative word, like the
Mm.
division of it, but it really kind of put people in this category or that category of, you're either going to embrace this and grab it by the kahunas, or you're going to just
Keep
carry
on
on doing
keeping
as you're
on.
told
Yeah.
and not change. Yeah, and be miserable and
Mm.
complain every day.
Yeah, literally. That's one thing you said, and he said it was like a phoenix rising. So it's like you went on that hero's journey. So you sort of went over here, you had that period of darkness, and then you sort of found yourself, found your way forward. It's like we've all we're all on different levels of that journey, but we're all walking the same path. And we
Mm,
all have that period of like, tumultuous darkness, right? And it's different for everyone. For you, it was a breakup. For Joe Blow down the road, it's something else. It's something else for everyone, but it's like you have that choice to make. Are you going to grow or are you going to just stay with the label, stay with depression, stay with the anxiety, stay with all these things, or are you going to grow and transform and evolve? And credit to you for doing that. And it's very powerful for a lot of
thank you.
females to do that too. You know what I mean? Especially being
Thank you.
in a
Yeah.
relationship like that too. Like if you want to delve more into that, feel free. But I feel like it's very inspiring for a lot of females out there that were in a similar boat to you now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, yeah, I'm happy to talk about that because I think it's important. I think it's like, it is hard to talk about. And that's why, and then it's just a vicious cycle, right? Like it's hard to talk about. So people don't talk about it. So then when people experience, they still don't talk about it. Like it keeps going. So yeah, it was crazy. I mean, my experience and from what I've kind of researched and understood about the things that I see out there is that like with narcissism, it's like you don't know that it's happening until it's like too late almost. Like you don't realize it's the verbal abuse and kind of the emotional manipulation, having boundaries, those boundaries being crossed, speaking up about it, and then making made to feel like I'm crazy for getting
Mm,
upset that you crossed my boundary. Like that's a really conflicting
mm,
feeling and thought and like thing to process and digest because I actually explained to my girlfriend at one point, I said to her that it was as if I was disconnected from my own intuition because the things that were happening to me and the things that I don't like happening to me, the things that were happening and the experiences that I was having, the way I was being mistreated, I knew it was wrong. But again, I was being made to feel like I was the person that was in the wrong for speaking up about it. And when you have, when you're following your gut, you're following your intuition, and this other person is over here going, no, no, that's wrong. No, no, you
yeah.
can't, it's like, hang on, what? So my internal compass was completely off. And there's also a lot of like kind of guilt and shame and anger that comes from that. They say there's stages of a breakup, there's stages of grief. Like we go through these stages. I was, and probably still am deep inside, angry for a long time. And I think a lot of that anger was actually towards myself because I've always been such a strong, independent person. And I'm like, how the hell did you let this happen? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I kind of
Yeah, the mirror
took
moment.
response.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, I was kind of hard on myself for that because I'm like, you're better than this. Like, you let this guy, like, take everything away from you that makes you you. Like, how could you? How dare you? And I was angry at myself for a long time, but I definitely expressed that anger outward.
Yeah, you see, you
I would,
projected it. Have you looked into human design? Are
yeah.
you a projector too?
No, I'm actually a manifesting generator.
Ah, there you go. I'm a projector, and a lot of listeners of mine will probably understand that.
I love human design.
Yeah,
I need to flip through the pages a little bit more. I don't know it that well. I know it on the surface level, but
yeah.
I do resonate with it a lot. Like it's great when you read that and you're like, "Oh, that makes sense."
Mm.
Okay. Because it takes a little bit of the like, I don't know, we're hard on ourselves, right? We're hard on ourselves as people. And when you kind of understand a bit better about your personality and the things about yourself that are written from somewhere else, and you read it and you're like, oh,
Mm.
okay, I can like ease off and like not be so hard on myself because this is who I am and it makes sense.
It sounds like you had a very, sounds like you had a very, like, it was almost a mirror moment for you, wasn't it? You had the mirror held up and you're like, I'm so angry at myself. How did you sift through that anger directed at yourself to then I guess thank yourself and forgive yourself for that period of your life to then move forward? How was that period? Because I feel like people get stuck with the anger and that and they hold on to it such a long time and then it causes disease or disease and all these things. How are you able to let that anger go and forgive yourself for allowing all of that to happen? How was that process? Or are
uh,
you even at
I
that, or are you
mean,
even in that process? Or
yeah. No, yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. I think probably the best way to answer that question is gratitude. I started
yeah,
focusing a lot on I got really kind of obsessed with manifestation and the quantum physics behind manifestation. And you know, gratitude, like saying mantras, saying affirmations about yourself. Once I started to be grateful for the things I did have rather than the things
yeah.
that I no longer had. And I started to be grateful for the qualities about myself that I had and the people that were around that didn't leave. And I kind of shifted my focus from like, oh, well, I thought my life was going to be this and now it's not. So woe is me. My expectation didn't turn out how I thought. So I'm going to be disappointed and wallow in it to okay, all that's out. So now there's so much room for so much magic to come in, whether it be people, opportunities, experiences, belief systems. And I think it was really in the gratitude and the practice of gratitude consistently, where, even the podcast, like when I started my first podcast, I would say to myself, I would have never started this podcast if I was still in that relationship.
Mm,
So I started to really open myself up to opportunities and be grateful for those opportunities and grateful for all the things around me. And I just changed, it helped me change my mindset to like, oh, this amazing thing that has just come to me wouldn't have if that was still a part of my life. So then I was kind of able to just let that go a little bit more and be like, actually, I'm grateful for that breakup. I'm grateful that I hit my rock bottom. I'm grateful that
yeah.
I'm gonna air quote here, took all of that from me. My self-esteem, my self-confidence, my intuition, you know what I mean? My connection
Mm,
like to my intuition, all that. Of course I was mad about it, but then I was grateful that it had all happened for me. And that's the other thing. That's why I corrected that earlier, like happened to me. You know, when you start to change your mindset and you start to talk to yourself differently, you start to speak differently, more positively, then it really does, like, that's your vibration then. And then so then you attract those things. So it was the gratitude. It was 100% the gratitude.
mm. And I've got another question that's came in then too. It's about women in these situations about finding their voice. It sounds like you found your voice. How were you able to find your voice? Because you talk about the chakra system, your throat chakra would have been a bit, how's your mother? How did you find your voice through all of that?
I think
Because
it
you
was,
found it. You clearly have found it. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I think, well, we kind of just talked briefly before too about, being a rebel. And I think the best way I can answer that is I just kind of embraced the rebel in me. And I did feel as though when I was in that relationship that I didn't have a voice or that my voice wasn't heard or that it was turned down, silenced, squashed. And like I said, with the experience with the doctor, where they were like, yeah, you're depressed and anxious. And I'm like, hang on, that's not who I am. Don't know how, but I'll be over that soon. Like, I'm going to work through that and get over that and not be classified as that anymore. And I think it's almost the same for finding my voice. It was like, I didn't have a voice in that relationship. And for me, that was my personal rock bottom in my life, which also, quick side note, I'm very grateful for. I've not experienced any kind of major loss of a close to loved one, at an early age or any time, or, there's not there. I had a really great childhood. There's been a lot of good, easygoing, good times in my life. I've had a lot of opportunity. So I know, not comparing rock bottom at all whatsoever, but that was my personal rock bottom. And I think because I was so dark and so down, once I wiped the tears away and was like, hey, I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to be moving on. Don't know how. I'm just going to take it day by day. It kind of gave me this motivation, almost like a snapback, right? Like you pull the arrow, the bow and arrow, you pull the arrow back, 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 and you're way back here and it's rock bottom. And then at one point, you let it go and it shoots off into the stars. And it was kind of like my shooting off into the stars moment. It was like, I'll be damned if some guy is going to take all this away from me. I'm taking it back. And I kind of came back with a vengeance. And I was like, I can do anything. And that's how I really felt that too. I felt like moving through that pain and that experience was the hardest thing that I ever had to do. And again, I think being in another country overseas away from everyone was obviously a huge part of that because I did feel so alone. Was like the fuel to my fire.
Mm.
It was kind of like this all happened for a reason. And the reason for me, what I think now, this day, now this might change in my career down the track, but the emotional awareness, the emotional regulation, that whole journey with the emotional health, it was like, this had to happen because now I can help people with this.
Correct.
And I felt it's become my purpose. It's a feeling that like, this is what I'm supposed to be talking about. And yes, I still have imposter syndrome. Yes, it's still scary. Yes, it's still hard to put myself out there, but I have this feeling and this knowing that this is the whole point of me being on this earth, having this human experience, is to help other people through this journey. So it kind of just became a no-brainer that like it's time to speak up now. Like, let's
Yeah.
go, girl.
That's powerful. Like, yeah, that's so inspiring, isn't it, for any young woman out there that's listening that has been or is in that space of where you were. It's pretty inspiring that there is a way out, and things do feel they can be, you can feel very alone. But given how powerful that just was, yeah, I don't really have any words for you there. That was
Well,
awesome.
I'd love to share one thing. It's just
Yeah,
come to mind,
go for it.
that was really impactful for me at the time. And I'd love to share this, like you say, if there's women or men, anyone out there that is either in this situation or has just come out of the situation or is right on the kind of edge of like, where do I go with this relationship, or any life situation, really, a job, a relationship. My good friend said this to me, and I think she heard it on a podcast actually, but she said it to me and it stuck with me ever since. And she said, because I would go over to her house, I'd be crying, oh, he did this and he said this and this happened. And your friends, like they everyone else can see it, right? But when you're in it, it's hard when you're in it. To
Oh
everyone else,
yeah.
it's a no-brainer. But when you're in it, it's hard. It's hard to make these decisions. So my friend said to me, she said, if everything is the same in 2 years from now, are you gonna be happy?
Oh, good question.
I was like, whoa. I'm pretty sure within days was when then that was like the breakup was like it happened. Like he moved out and it was like official. And it was the crystal necklace. It was there's all these seeds that were planted along the way. But when she asked me that question, I was like, wow, that's it.
That was your moment,
That's it.
yeah. Yeah, that was like your fork
Absolutely
in the
not.
road. You right.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, it's a
So
powerful question.
I'd like to encourage, you know, ask yourself that. Like if you're at a crossroads with any decision or any kind of anything, any situation, like that's such a powerful question to keep in the back of your mind is if everything is the same as it is right now, in 2 years from now, am I going to be happy? And I think this is really powerful for women too, because women, we're nurturing, we're caring, we're people pleasing tendencies. I think there's a lot of women out there that unfortunately end up with these relationships where they're like, oh, well, he's pretty much perfect except for like this one thing or these couple things. And at one point in their life, I'm sure every woman has thought, oh, I can change him or I can fix him or, I can help him through that. And it's like, maybe you can, but if that doesn't change, are you still going to be okay in that situation? That's something
Mm.
really powerful to reflect on.
Powerful questions to pose too, for anyone listening out there. That's a really powerful story. Yeah, I don't really. If there's anything else there that you'd like to share, Liv, please feel free to share it because actually, no, there is something actually. So we'll circle back to something else you said probably 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
When you sort of start that spiritual journey, yeah, you do start to dabble in all those things. Like I did it too. What was the one profound experience that you had back then? Was it the breathwork session? Was it a meditation? Was it a sound bowl? Was there something profound in a space that was really sort of transformative?
Well, there were definitely some healing experiences that I had that impacted me in a big way. RTT was one, restorative transformational therapy.
That's
It was
powerful
like a
stuff.
hypnotherapy session. Yeah, that was really, really impactful for me. But to be honest, I think there wasn't one specific thing that helped me more than the others. I think by trying all the different things and really exploring that world was the most profound part of it
Yeah.
because it got me into rooms with people that I wouldn't have otherwise been in a room with. It got me learning new vocabulary, understanding different language, understanding different views and beliefs and ways that people see the world, connecting with people that, like I say, I wouldn't have otherwise connected with, and doing so in a very non-judgmental way. Because let's be honest, a lot of these healing modalities, like it's a different kind of group of people that kind of partake in these activities a lot of the time, right? Like, and sometimes those people have like a bit of an image and you can kind of see that person like, oh wow, they're like whatever you want to call it, and like kind of label people a little bit.
Yep.
But I think having that having that experience really allowed me to kind of like fuck all that off.
Yeah.
Like every human has so much value to give, and you never know where someone's at or how someone's feeling or what someone is experiencing. And trying all of those different things really helped me connect with a lot of different kind of people. And it just opened my eyes to the world. And it kind of just made me believe like there is no right or wrong way to do this.
No.
This, as in this healing journey, this healing experience, or this life, like just living life. So, yeah, I think the best part about it was just not being afraid to just go and try it and not judging it like, oh, breath work or oh, yoga or whatever. Like, oh, ecstatic dance. Like, oh, that's weird. A bunch of people just dance around like weirdos. Like that, people, you can think that, or you can just go and be like, oh, this is interesting and something I've never done before. I'm going to give it a go and see how it makes me feel and not have any expectations or preconceptions or judgments and just really being present with all that. So, yeah, I think the connection and the way that I learned how to connect with people and communicate with people probably was also one of the biggest things.
Mm. If there's one tool, like one tool that helped you through all this, whether it was that conversation with the friend, or like, was there a tool that helped you, I don't know, journaling or something? Like, was there a tool there that was so, I guess, your foundation of getting yourself through? Because we all have tools, right? But there's one tool we sort of all fall back on when shit hits the fan. What was the tool you used, or was there multiple?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think for me, it's not really a tool, but I'm a big water baby. Like I love being by the water. And I lived at the ocean. I could walk there in 5 minutes from my house. And whenever I was feeling low or crappy or whatever, I wanted to just go be by the water. Whether I was like in it or sitting next to it, just nature. Really nature, I think, was the biggest one for me. Journaling was huge as well because I was so lonely and on my own. My journal, it's kind of like, oh, my best friend. Like if I was feeling something or whatever, I would just like write. And it was almost like I was talking to a friend.
Yep.
But I think the real pivotal one for me was nature. And like I said, I was very lucky to be living in such a beautiful part of the world. I was right by the ocean, but also right by the like there's huge trees and the forest there, like these big carry trees and the Brennup forest and all this. So whenever I was kind of lonely or feeling a little lost or sad or angry or whatever, I was like, I just got to get outside, put my feet on the ground, jump in the water, or just be in nature and just like be. And that always calmed me down. It was a big one for like calming me down. Like when things were really heightened, it was like calm me down. Um, I did quite a lot of yoga as well. Like that was really good for me. Um, I actually would for a while there I was going like every day. I was do an hour of yoga every day, which was great. But yeah, nature. I think nature has to be the biggest one. But all of them had their place. You know what I mean? Like I went to some really incredible breathwork ceremonies. I did the ecstatic dance, like I said, these different kind of therapies. Um, what was the other one that I just thought of? Oh, I even went to like a drawing class. Like that was really cool. Being creative,
Mm.
exercising my creativity was also very huge because it kind of got, I would try things like creative things. And I'd be like, oh, I actually really like this. And it was like a really nice way to kind of get to know myself again. So creativity and nature, I would have to say, probably the two biggest. But again, yeah, just all of them, all of them had a purpose, but nature is still my go-to. Like if I'm feeling a little bit stuck or just a little bit like, ugh, I go to the water. That's my thing.
Yeah, nature's cool, isn't it? Because I feel like we're all sort of out of touch with nature. You know, they put shoes on us, and we live in these houses that aren't on the ground. Well, they're on the ground, but there's like concrete and flooring, and it's not really on the ground. And I find that when we need to go back to our old ways of doing things. Not everything, but definitely grounding. And it's very important because I find it with kids too, not just with us, like just being in the sand or on the dirt barefoot. can just help so much. And yeah, I feel like we all need to spend more time outside in nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you probably have a similar algorithm to me, I feel, because we have a lot of the same kind of values and talk about a lot of the same things. But I see stuff on my scroll all the time about, the science behind literally just grounding, earthing. Like it's a thing, earthing. It's like they
Mm,
call it that now. So it's like energetically, yes, like we are energy. Our body is just energy, and the earth is energy, and everything on the earth is energy. So when we, like you say, the rubber soles on our shoes. Like we live in houses, like all this, even the cities. Oh, let's just pour concrete over all this and live on
mm,
top of it. Like, no thanks. There is literal energy and like there's science behind this that when you go and have your feet on the ground, it literally like gives you like happy chemicals and hormones and positive energy like flowing through your body. And I don't know about you, but I feel it. Like, have you ever
same.
gone on a camping trip? You go camping over the weekend, especially like you don't have service, your phone's off, whatever. You just feel better.
Yeah. Yep. And we're lucky, we're a battery, so we need recharging, and the earth is our charging port. I find.
Mm,
I find that if I'm lacking
absolutely.
energy or whatever, it's like I'll just get the shoes off, I'll lay in the sun, I'll go for a walk barefoot, I'll do something outside because I feel like the sun is powerful as well. That can recharge us too. Another
Huge.
source of
Yeah.
energy, you don't. And then we talk about food and stuff too. Like food, yeah, food's a good source, but it's like we can get our source from other, like there's so many sources of energy that can charge us up.
Absolutely. Yep. 100%.
Yeah. And
Actually,
yeah, you go.
I just remember hearing something once. I was like, it was kind of like an analogy this person was explaining. I think it was in an interview, and this fella asked the person he was talking to, goes, "What do you do when your phone's on 3% or 20% even? What do you do?"
Charge it.
And it's like, oh my God, my phone's on 3%. Like there's even people they'll be out at a restaurant or something, like, oh, ask the waiter, do you have a charger? I need to
Yeah, they'll
charge my
freak
phone. Like
out. Mm.
it's important. Like we cannot let the phone die. But like, are we creating that much urgency with ourself, recharging ourself, taking
Yeah,
that good care of ourself? I heard that. I was like, oh, that's good.
that is good.
I
Because
wish I could credit the source. I can't remember where it was,
we're a
but
battery. We're a battery too. So you're right. So it's like holding that mirror up and going, well, we lose our shit over a phone going flat. Well, what if we go flat? We can go flat. So what do we do? You know
and
what
that
I
I
mean?
think that was the other, yeah, that was the other question that he asked too. And he's like, well, when you're feeling flat, like what do you do for yourself? And the person was like, they didn't even have an answer. And it was like, isn't that interesting? You're so urgent when it comes to like your piece of technology, but when it comes to your own self, you're like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah. And that's everyone.
Yeah.
But for me, I like getting by the water too, or going for a bike ride in nature and just losing myself and not even having a phone on me and just connecting. Yeah, it's great.
That's another one too, I think actually is movement. Like
Yes.
movement was big for me.
Because we're energies. We
You know,
have
the
we have to move. We can't be stagnant because then if we're stagnant, then our energy's stagnant, then things aren't sort of happening. We need to like we're designed humanly to move.
Yeah, literally. And it's like, it's so important. I just actually made a reel about this the other day. I was like driving in the car and the song came on the radio and it just, I don't know why, I just started crying. And I was like, oh, this is great. Whatever was in me needed to move through me. And I so embraced this random, spontaneous sadness that I'm feeling at the moment. And I think it's so important to like express all of these things, but like
Hmm.
doing it in a healthy way, of course. Like if we're angry, you don't just want to go like run around screaming and hitting people, but like doing it in like a really productive way. And I
Boxing.
think probably yeah, exactly. Like I think one of the easiest and most fun ways to boost your mood instantaneously or get that emotion that feels uncomfortable up and through you and out of you is dancing. I love dancing. Maybe just put your favorite song on and like 2 or 3 minutes later you're like, I feel great. I'm out of breath. Your heart's beating, your blood's flowing, your temperature's risen, and it's like boom, like who has a boogie and then feels like shit after. Like
Yeah, that's
that
true.
doesn't happen.
Hmm. I don't mind a good dance party
I love it. I love
without
it.
alcohol involved. It's great.
Yeah. And that's honestly, that's so key. Like, I just want to say that, like, if you've never done that before, if you've never just like gone and danced, even if it's like alone in your room where no one can see you without alcohol, like I hear people say so many times, oh, I need a couple of drinks before I get on the dance floor. Like, no, you don't. You just
Get on
care
there
about too
anyway.
much what people think.
Yeah.
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 Like you just care about everybody else. Like, go have fun, go move your body. Who cares? Like, who cares?
Exactly.
So yeah, movement's huge. Movement is huge. And like I think like changing your body temperature, which also kind of comes with movement, right? Like if you go for a run or a bike ride or a dance, like you're going to be kind of sweaty and whatever. Saunas and ice baths are my jam as well. Those have been really great for me. Probably not so much at the time when I was like in it, but now especially the ice bath side. Like I grew up with a sauna. So I was always having saunas, but didn't do it because of the health benefits. I just did it because like I like a sauna. But now there's all this, information and research about how good it is for you and why and all these things and the ice bath as well. I really love that one now to kind of as something that I plug into to make myself feel good and kind of regulate and because again I think it's a little bit of like an analogy, like you sit in a hot sauna at 90, 100 degrees, like, is that uncomfortable? Yeah. Is it hard? Yeah. You mentally kind of have to go, breathe, just sit through it and kind of push through a little bit. And it's like such a great analogy for life because it's if you can put yourself in uncomfortable situations often and on purpose, then when big sticky things that happen in our lives that are uncomfortable, we can move through that with a little bit more grace.
Well said. That was a
Thank you.
that was a sort of really awesome podcast we just did there. If there was well you did, I just facilitated it. If there was a piece of it, you might have already given it, but to wrap it up, sort of, there's a piece of advice out there that you'd give to someone in a similar spot to you. I love how you said earlier too, actually, hang on, before I ask that question, I love how you said earlier, you said men and women. I reckon that's great because a lot of men are in that as well. And that sort of gets lost in this space sometimes that men can be affected emotionally as well. And that's a big thing I talk about too is men expressing their emotions, expressing their sadness. I don't know how long you've been following Instagram for, but there's a reel of me crying on the internet somewhere that went sort of viral. It's like we need to do that. And for me to be able to, I was just crying one day just in the other room here. And I thought, I need to like I didn't want to. It was a bit of fear. There. I was like, I need to show my emotions. So I just said, look, men need to cry. I spent the last 20 minutes crying. Like it's something that, yeah, when you said men and women, I was like, yeah, I can resonate with that because it's not just this can be controversial, but it's true. But men can be abused too, just in other ways in a
Of
relationship.
course.
And men have feelings and we get suppressed as well. So it does work both ways. Yes, there'll be some people who are pissed off that I said that, but it's also true that men do also have feelings and emotions. I love that you said not just, men and women. Yeah, I just circled back. It just came to me then.
But good. I love that you just said, this might piss some people off. Good. If you just
Yeah,
heard that and you're feeling pissed off, maybe that's something you should pay attention to. Why does that make you upset?
a lot of the
What belief
feminist groups and
system?
that sort of get triggered by that.
Well, it's like, but what is your belief around that hearing that makes you upset?
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
we're human. We're all human. It doesn't matter
Hmm.
what bits we got. Like we're still made of,
But it's not just all
blood
men being the like men
and
aren't always the bad person in it. There are
no.
men out there that have been physically abused as well, have been emotionally abused, but in the space in the 3D world that we're in, men sort of get silenced a bit as well. I think it does work both ways, like a pendulum, right?
Yeah.
It's going both ways.
Yeah. And again, a little bit controversial, but I don't want to say it's harder for men it's not harder for men to speak up. It's harder for men to express because they've been so
Yeah.
conditioned ever since they were little boys, like, toughen up, don't cry, be a man, like
That's
men.
generational.
Yeah. And so it's like, but now that's how the way the world is. And this is my other huge thing why I'm so passionate about emotional health and emotional intelligence is because it's like I don't like that. I don't believe in that. I don't think we should condition men to be this like, oh, toughen up and just push it all down and suppress your feelings. No, you got to feel that stuff. You got to feel it, you got to express it. But but there needs to be some education on like how. How do I express this? How do I communicate my feelings? Men don't have that. And this is why I'm so passionate about this. And in my podcast, I speak to millennials. And, I have some episodes around like raising kids because, hey, like we're all adults now, like say everyone in our cohort, we have to like uncondition our beliefs and our conditioning to recondition ourselves and kind of recalibrate. But like, what if our generation right now, let's just say hypothetically, was extremely emotional intelligent, like our whole generation. Now, these are the parents raising the kids of the next generation. So, if the parents are emotionally intelligent, then they can teach the kids how to be emotionally
Correct. That's how
intelligent.
you
And
fix
we
it.
can totally, yeah, we can totally flip all this generational trauma of like
Because look what we're
emotions
living
and
in
all this
now.
stuff.
We've our parents are probably the same age. We've grown up in the don't cry. Like they grew up in the
Mm,
don't cry. It's a sign of weakness, sign of whatever. And then men don't ask for help. It's a generational thing. The best thing I did in my stuff was, as I said in your podcast, was ask for help. And
mm.
that was like a generational thing that I broke. Was like, no, I'm gonna just raise my hand here and say I need help. And that's the thing.
Yeah,
Like
and
that's how we break this spell that we're all being under. It's definitely a spell, and we can break it. We have the power to break it.
100%. And I celebrate you in that. Like that takes a lot of courage because you've been probably, subconsciously conditioned to like, oh, if you ask for help, then you're weak and you can't do
Yeah,
it on
it's a
your own and there's something
societal
wrong with you.
programming. It's generational. It's like all mixed into one little
Yeah.
big ball of energy that you just poke it in like a balloon, just go gone.
Yeah. And, honestly, you as well, like with your podcast and the conversations that you have and the journey you've been on and how you share about that, like it's so powerful because the more we can have these kinds of conversations where people are talking about feelings, talking about the uncomfortable
And
stuff, talking
sex.
about yes.
Yes, because that's another taboo topic, and there's
Yeah.
a very powerful, energetic, you know, moment that happens between masculine and feminine, and it's gets lost in the porn and the hookup culture. And I talk about that too. So yes, no, there's no topic off limits, Livia.
Yeah, and it's like I just love that you have these conversations because then it makes it okay for other people to have the conversations, right? It's like stepping into the leadership of it and being like, yeah, this is weird and uncomfortable and taboo and controversial and I might get flack for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. And
Yeah, exactly.
that's this kind of like unspoken like permission slip for everyone else like, guess what? Like you can do it too. You
Hmm.
can say things too. Have those conversations. It's important.
Hmm. And I just had a question coming to me too. We've been going for a while. It's great. We need to reconnect and do another one now after this and just pick a few topics and just have a. Yeah, I feel like you and I are going to be doing this regularly, I think. Because I want to. Yeah, I've got a few ideas I need to talk off air, but we're still on air. Whoops. Anyway, I was just going to ask you. I just love this chat. It's been so good. Was there a moment, because I talked about asking for help and I thought, oh, I need to ask Livia that question. Did you ask for help during all of that shit? Was there a moment where you just went, look, my hand's up. I don't know who's going to grab it. I think you said you grabbed it, but did you ask for help? Were you like, look, I'm in a spot. I need some help. And who was that
I
person
think
for you? And did you have any mentors or anything as well? So it's a two-part question.
sure, yeah. I think I didn't like directly ask for help. I
Oh,
am
similar.
very yeah, I think I'm very much like a verbal processor. So like when I'm trying to solve problems and work through situations, I talk it out and I got to be honest, I probably spent too long of a time with the few people that I did have close to me constantly going over the same situations of he said this and did that and this happened and all these things and I think I really dumped a lot on others and I do know like reflecting back at some point in that they kind of started to pull back from me because like I was too much. So I don't think I ever kind of raised my hand and said I need some help, but I kind of just was like went from being codependent on my partner to like now I'm codependent on my like two or three friends that I have and I just like emotionally dump on them and they helped me in the best way that they could. But I think also their pulling back was helpful because it just made me realize, right? Like it gave me the awareness, like, okay, I can't keep rehashing the situation. I did though at the time also start investing a lot in myself.
Yeah.
So not right away, but like I got a coach. I've worked with multiple coaches since then. I digest a lot of personal development books. But I think, yeah, I had help. I didn't ask for help, but I had help,
Yeah, so help
if that
found
makes
you. So
sense.
it's like an energetic thing. Like, yeah, because it was a
Yeah.
similar boat for me. I sort
Yeah.
of just help just found me. I just sort of put that
Mm,
out in the universe, you could say, and then it found me. It sounds like you sort of did the same thing. You sort of set an intention, and then a book
yeah.
or a podcast or a coach or whatever just found you. You didn't really go looking for it. Yeah, similar boat.
Yeah, and similar, like I binged quite a few of your episodes before I interviewed you for my podcast, and hearing part of your story when you kind of had that aha moment, like you were like drinking one night and you woke up and you're super hungover, and then you were like, okay, no, like the table, you were dancing on the table and all that. And you kind of, and I think I did the same thing. It was kind of like a surrender,
Yeah,
right? Like to the
literally.
universe. It was like, all right, I'm here now. What the fuck? And you had that moment, and I think I had multiple moments of that. And then that's when, that coach or that new friend or that book or that
Just
invitation to
finds
that
you.
party,
Mm,
yeah, it found me. And I mean, to be honest though, like I'll be honest, like I spiraled for a while. Like I was on the drugs, the alcohol, going to
yeah.
bars, hooking up with guys. Like, of course I was doing that it right away,
Mm,
but then it got to that point where I was like, right, this isn't serving me. Like this isn't really helping. It's just
no.
numbing. So when you kind of, throw your hands up and go, all right, like intentionally, like show me the way, like show me what's next. Like what do I do? And then, the things found me. So yeah, I changed my environment a lot too. That was a big one for me. I changed my job. I went out of town for a while. Like I moved to a different house in a different kind of area of like, it's kind of technically a different town, but basically just another suburb nearby. And so, yeah, that was, that was helpful.
That's a very that podcast is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all you shared today. Like we've been going for nearly an hour. I'm just sitting here going, wow, that's so cool that you've gone through the shit. You're out the other side. It's just testament to you. You've done such a great job, especially being here during all that crap too of the last 4 years. You're here in Australia where we were one of the targets for all of that too. So there was all of that pressure going on, the fear and that going on out in the external. And you also had all of that stuff going on in the internal too, of you were fearing
Yeah.
what's next. They were putting fear in what's next as well. It's like you were getting it hit from everywhere. And, I wasn't in a relationship or anything, but I was in a similar boat. I was fearing here and fear out there. And it's like, well, people like us, not people like us, we just dealt with that the best way we could to now be in a space where you are now is awesome. It's testament to you and your journey. It's a very powerful story. I'm looking forward to hearing more of it. I feel like you need to speak about it more.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to maybe evolve my podcast a little bit in that respect. And I'm interviewing everyone else, and I'm not really sharing much about my knowledge and understanding. And I think in the second season, I might start to incorporate
Yeah.
a little bit more
Which
of
is
that.
why I had a feeling there was a story here. So I was like, I need to interview you too. And I'm glad I had that feeling and acted on it because there's a pretty powerful story here, as we've all heard for the last hour. There's anything
Well,
else?
thank you.
If there's anything else you'd like to share before we actually, yeah, there is. Where can people find you, Livia?
Yeah, so I'm on the internet,
Yeah.
here and there. So Instagram at Livia Lowder, and then the podcast is at Emotions Untapped. So Livia.Lowder, emotions.untapped. And I'm just in the process of launching my website too, which is
Ooh,
eqnation.org. So that's
EQ
coming
Nation.
soon. Yeah. And yeah, check me out on there. I mean, I'm on Facebook as well, Livia Lowder, and the podcast page is on there, but I'm most active on Instagram. And I have a course upcoming as well, which I won't say too many details about that, but come on into my space and you will see it soon. I'm really passionate about helping people and really just creating a space where people can be supported and feel just seen on their journey, and have the tools and the resources to kind of move through that with a little bit more guidance and grace than kind of what I felt like I had or I didn't have. So it's, I'm here for it. I'm here to support you. And I see you on your journey, and it sucks doing it alone, and like it doesn't have to be that way. So there's so much power in community. So yeah, give me a follow, and season 2 of the podcast is coming soon, and the evolution of this podcast is going to be a lot of fun. So come along for the ride.
Yeah, and people out there might see a familiar face on there in season 2 as well.
That's right. That's right. I almost feel like you and me should do our own podcast. I feel like we
I
could like
I have the same feeling, which is what I was going to talk to you about off air, but we have the chat on air if you want. Olivia, thank
no,
you
let's
so
talk about it
much.
off air, but I love
Yeah,
this.
thank you so much for thank you so much for putting your podcast on that page that you're wanting guests, and yeah, this obviously happened for a reason too. I feel like I was supposed to meet you on that 2 million podcast group. There's posts like every day of like 100,000 posts, and yours just happened to be there. And yeah, definitely meant to be, and a connection that I'm grateful for. So thank you for sharing all you shared today. It was awesome.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me on and holding space and asking questions. And yeah, I love this connection. It was a pleasure interviewing you, and it's been an honor to be here and be interviewed by you now. So really cool stuff. Thank you
We're
so
gonna
much.
we're gonna do part 2. I think there's definitely a part 2 here.
Let's do it.
Yeah, this has been the Breaking Free podcast, everyone. Thank you so much for listening and watching wherever in the world you are. I'm your host, Nathan Francis. I will see everyone again real soon. There's some really awesome guests coming up. I've banked a few episodes here. So, yeah, the podcast is back up and going. So, I'll see you guys soon. Cheers. Thanks again, Livia. That was awesome.